Good morning and welcome to Rising. We have a great show for you today. Robbie, what do we have?
Well, Michael Starr Hopkins and Marissa Martinez are in for Team Rising to discuss the White House's fight against OSHA's hold on the workplace vaccine mandate. And of course, Brianna Joy Gray discusses details of Biden's Build Back Better tax cuts. Plus, Pablo Manriquez weighs in on the social spending bill's immigration provisions, and we can expect to see pass the Senate. But first, Ghislaine Maxwell's siblings filed a complaint to the United Nations this week and are requesting help in securing her bail ahead of her trial in connection to Jeffrey Epstein. Human rights lawyers filed an action with the UN Working Group on arbitrary detention and allege that Maxwell is subject to, quote, inhumane and degrading conditions, adding that the, quote, her demonization in the press prevents her from having a fair trial, according to Daily Beast reporter Kate Briquelet.
This comes after Maxwell's legal request for documents from the settlement fund for victims of sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein. The administrator of the Victims' Compensation Program opposed her request. Briquelet reports that the legal scuffle comes as Maxwell battles to block evidence from appearing at the trial, including Epstein's address book of high-flying contacts, and a box containing a sex toy. The Victims' Fund closed in August and resulted in nearly $125 million paid out to more than 135 victims of Epstein. Women were required to waive the right to sue Epstein's estate and related entities, including Maxwell. Senior reporter at the Daily Beast, Kate Briquelet, joins us to discuss the legal efforts being made by Ghislaine Maxwell's team ahead of her trial. Kate, welcome to Rising.
Thanks for having me.
What is this? What is the strategy starting to shape up to be that we can gather from these requests made so far?
Well, there's multiple strategies on multiple fronts, but I guess in terms of Ghislaine's defense counsel in America, she's trying to undermine the credibility of accusers in any way she can. That includes excluding certain evidence, such as Epstein's infamous Little Black Book. She's also trying to exclude evidence of a household manual. Most importantly, she's trying to exclude testimony from a woman referred to as minor victim 3 in the indictment, saying that this woman was of the age of consent in England when she was abused by Jeffrey Epstein. And so far, it seems that the judge is willing to limit some of this accuser's testimony. And already, the prosecution and Maxwell's lawyers are referring to her as accuser 3 or witness 3, as opposed to minor victim 3.
And, there's no age of consent to be abused. So how does this factor into whether or not this is going to be allowed to go forward?
Well, that's part of Maxwell's argument, is that these women perhaps had sex acts with Epstein that were consensual. She's probably going to argue consent in some of these cases, even though the government argues they were trafficked. There is no consent. This is sex trafficking, and people cannot consent to sex trafficking. But part of her defense will be, pointing out that the victims were of the age of consent in the various jurisdictions where they were abused. So I think Maxwell's team is throwing whatever they can into the bowl to see what sticks, essentially. The allegations against Maxwell are so serious that, at least in the court of public opinion, she's already guilty.
Well, right, and specific, and seeing what sticks. So her team is trying to make this argument to the UN that she's been subjected to what did she say? Unprecedented discrimination. It doesn't. Is there any merit to that? It doesn't look to me like she's been put through anything that is unprecedented in terms of the criminal justice system. What is there? Do they have a more specific argument?
Sure, and it should be noted that Ghislaine Maxwell's defense counsel says they had nothing to do with this petition to the UN, that it's some human rights lawyers in Paris that were concerned about how she was being treated. But as we've seen over the past year, Ghislaine's defense counsel in America has complained about her conditions at the Brooklyn detention facility where she's staying. And, to some observers, this is just another day at the office at a federal detention facility, right? They kind of say that she shouldn't be complaining at all, that other prisoners have it worse and that she has certain privileges. But in that UN petition, Ghislaine's family says that the prison has violated Mandela rules on, certain requirements for prisoners and their care, things like prohibiting food or water or using restraints like irons and chains. So, they're asking this UN working group to urge the U.S. government to release her. And they say that Ghislaine, in her case, has faced discrimination at every turn, every time she's applied for bail, and even been willing to give up her citizenship in other countries and her millions of dollars in assets, that she's being treated differently than other high-profile defendants.
Well, it's not like the prison system has some sterling record in this case, right? Right. Jeffrey Epstein obviously did die or was killed or something really bad happened behind bars. So are they making anything of that?
Sure, and I think that Ghislaine's family wants to make her into sort of a poster child for criminal justice reform, right? I mean, there are problems in this jail. There's problems with heat, food, water, lighting, just basic comforts, right? It's overrun with rats. Ghislaine has said she's been fed maggot-infested food. So it's not that her complaints are without merit. I think that, some observers might say, well, everybody in the prison system has to deal with this. But it'll be interesting to see where her complaints go. And so far, the federal judge in the case, Allison Nathan, has been receptive to her complaints and making sure that she's being taken care of at the Brooklyn detention facility.
And real quickly, if they do manage to throw out these two young women who were of age in England, how damaging is that to the prosecution's case?
The prosecution has said that Accuser 3's testimony is being introduced to show that it was part of a pattern, part of a conspiracy, that Ghislaine Maxwell knew of Jeffrey Epstein's sexual preference for underage girls. But Accuser 3 isn't tied specifically to any counts in the indictment. So it's unclear whether, if Accuser 3's testimony is limited in any way, it's unclear whether it will impact the prosecution's case because they already have 3 other witnesses who will testify. But so far, Judge Nathan has indicated she will at least allow some of Accuser 3's testimony, which includes, according to a recent court filing, descriptions of a repugnant sex act. So we're waiting to see what Minor Victim 3 will say. A lot of what's being previewed for the trial is filed with redactions, and we're just not sure exactly who's going to testify and who's going to say what.
Right. Kate Briquelet, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we will tell you what's on our radars up next.